How's it going, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning into this video. Let's talk about one of the very most important things about owning any vehicle. This video will be specifically about 6.5s, but if you want any sort of longevity out of your engine, you want to be able to not have to worry about, when was the last time your oil changed, if you just bought a truck, when was the last time that somebody greased the front end on these independent front suspension trucks. So let's talk about preventative maintenance, doing your oil changes, changing out your fuel filter, and maybe some things that you may not necessarily remember to do on a service. So today I'll be doing an oil change, fuel filter change, the lift pump filter changes. Of course, some of the things in this video may not be exactly the same as your truck, like my lift pump, because not everybody's running a fast, of course, but maybe some other things like windshield wipers. When was the last time your air filter was changed? When was the last time that you really shook down your front end? But this is what I use typically. I love Wix products, and I use full synthetic oil. Fun fact, MicroGuard is made by Wix, so if you don't want to spend big coin, of course, on high dollar Wix filters, MicroGuard is made by Wix as well. So these are my two lift pump filters. I use the Wix XP for the oil filter. I'm not going to go into prices on these because prices will be different as far as what you're going to do on your oil change. Let's talk about intervals. Of course, use your owner's manual as a guide for oil change intervals. Typically what I do is every 3,000 miles I'll change the oil, and every 6,000 miles I'll change the fuel filters. And I always spray out my air filter because I have an SMB that's reusable, and when the filter starts to deteriorate, I swap it out for a new filter. But always change your air filters. It is a filter, so replace it. But yeah, let's get into it. I'm making this video for the new 6.5 owners that don't really know the anatomy of where you change your filters. Just a couple things to look for when shaking down the front end. Of course, rotate your tires so you can get longevity out of them. But yeah, I was asked to do this video, and I thought it was a good idea, so let's get into it. Alright, so first things first, on the oil change, you're going to locate your oil drain plug. It should be 14 millimeter. Just gonna go ahead and undo that bolt. Try not to get it all over you. There is a little magnet, I believe, on the bottom. If not, I could be wrong. Check that for any metal shavings, of course. Go ahead and dunk your fingers if you want into the oil. Check for any metal shavings there, any bearing material, things of that nature. While that's draining, you can go ahead and take down your oil filter. Of course, this is not a clean job by any means, and the oil filter is located directly above the front drive shaft, so that's going to get everywhere. But go ahead and just let them drain. While you're underneath here, this would be a perfect opportunity to shake down the drive lines, of course. Should make sure your U-joint at the transfer case and the front differential are good. Go ahead and look at the rear drive shaft, make sure there's no play in there. For the extended cab, long crew cab, guys, you're going to have what's called a carrier bearing or a center bearing. Go ahead and push up on your drive shaft, make sure there's not a frig ton of play. You can see at my drive shaft right here. Focus. There's a little bit of play right there. That carrier bearing is going to have to be replaced at some point. Check your slip yoke. Make sure there's no play there. Isn't. Check to see if any leaks or anything like that on the fuel tank. Of course, the sump kit that I have on my truck, you won't have typically if you have a stock truck. This isn't perfect. I will be redoing this when I completely tear down the truck, but it does have a little spot of diesel fuel. There's that other port for it. But come back here to your rear diff, give it a good shake, check your pinion seal. Of course, you can see that mine's leaking a little bit. That pinion seal has to be replaced. Be a good idea to check and make sure your brake cylinders on both sides aren't leaking. Just take your fingers. Mine is not. Look in these little sight holes. Check your brake material. Make sure you got good brakes. And you can see my wheel cylinders aren't leaking on the back. So, and that should be enough time for your oil to drain all over the floor. Alright, so just to correct myself on the oil pan plug, there is no magnet on the very end of the plug, so just make sure that there's no bearing material or metal shavings in the oil. When reinstalling the oil pan plug, make sure that this little rubber O-ring on this washer is still intact. If not, you're going to need a new washer. And don't over tighten these plugs. You will strip the threads out. Of course, you want to make sure that the threads are okay, and mine are. Do not over tighten these. Strip the threads off the plug and or the oil pan, and if you strip them off the oil pan, that is not a fun day. It's a real pain in the butt on a stock ride height truck. Of course, it's much easier on a lifted truck. No worries there, but just be careful when reinstalling it. It has to be tight, but don't over tighten that. As far as the oil filters go, of course, the oil filter sits on the engine horizontally, not vertically. So you can't fill the oil filter before installing it on the engine. It's a real kind of disappointment on the 6.5 application, but on a number of other engines. Just make sure when you have your oil plug nice and tight, you put your oil filter back on, and you filled the engine with oil. Get in the cab, start it up, make sure you got good oil pressure, and you should not have an issue. Shut the engine back down, recheck your oil level, and top it off if need be. When installing your oil filter, put a little bit of oil on the O-ring to make it have wet torque instead of dry torque. Do not put these on dry. Just put a little coat of oil on this O-ring and you'll be good to go. That should make it nice and tight. I like to put them on hand tight and just as tight as I can go by hand. That way if I am ever in a pinch, I can take it back off if I'm on the side of the road and change my oil filter. If it does drip a little bit, I will take my oil filter wrench and snug it up, maybe a quarter turn or so, just to prevent it from leaking any further. Between oil changes, be sure to, every once in a while, check your oil level. It takes 2 seconds to do it. Do not run these things low on oil. Much like any engine, you will destroy them. You'll cause unnecessary wear and tear, and it's just not a good day. So let's put that old plug back in, put the filter on, put 7 quarts of oil in the engine, start it up, and we'll see where the PSI is on the oil. Hey everybody, future me, just popping in for just a quick second. So not all 6.5 oil filter housing or mounts will be the same. It will vary depending on which block you have. For example, my block is a 506 block in my pickup. In my wife's pickup, it has a 141 block, and both of those are mounted horizontally, so you can't fill the oil filter before installation. You have to, of course, lubricate that seal or that O-ring, and then install the filter without adding oil into the filter. However, this is a 6.5 motor, and it is a 929 block, and all the oil filters will be on the driver's side. However, you can see that this one is straight up and down, running this way, and not horizontally. So just keep that in mind. Some of you get it easy as far as, you know, adding oil and preventing any sort of preemptive wear. For my truck and the wife's truck, we unfortunately can't add oil before installing, or add oil to the oil filter before installing it onto the engine. Of course you can, but you're gonna make a hell of a mess and just waste brand new oil. So it will vary between the blocks. Yeah, just a little fun fact. Really adrenaline pinching stuff watching somebody pour oil. Alright, so now that the oil is where it needs to be on the dipstick, just let the lift pump run, glow plugs run, and now it's time to start up. Wait for this needle to come up. Got good oil pressure. Let it run a little bit. Get out and check for leaks. Make sure nothing's dripping out from underneath the truck. Now would be another good time to make sure that you don't have any blow-by coming out of the oil fill. No pressure whatsoever. Make sure your fan belt isn't wobbling all around. And shut her down. Also, while you're up front underneath the hood, check your fan belt. Make sure your belt tensioner is working nice and is taut. Don't want it too tight because you'll just start wearing belts out. Don't want it loose because of course it'll pop off. Make sure there's no cracks in the ribs. I know that's difficult to see, but this belt isn't old by any means. It still has really good part number showing. Also, check your fan clutch. Should have quite a bit of resistance behind it when turning it. If you can just free spin it, like give it a good like that, and it's just free spinning, you should be experiencing some overheating issues if it's just free spinning. But go ahead and make sure that your fan clutch down here is in good working order. Once the oil drains down to the oil pan, double check your dipstick, make sure that your oil is right where it needs to be. If it needs a little more, top it off, and you are done with the oil change side of things. We'll get to fuel filter And of course, the majority of people aren't running a fast 165 lift pump or an air dog or anything of that matter. So these two filters won't apply to y'all who aren't, but that fuel filter under the hood will. But yeah. So when changing your factory fuel filter, you're gonna have two different styles of this filter. They're both the same, but one requires a ring like this one, and then it's just a little, get up out of there. Here we go. Just a little cartridge style. You're gonna get fuel everywhere. Just a little cartridge style. And then you'll have one with the ring built onto it. Now they'll both work. It doesn't really matter, but if you do get one of these filters, make sure you have this ring. I like to save these just in case, but eventually I will be doing away with that filter housing. When installing the new fuel filter, don't forget to remove this O-ring that seals the filter to the filter housing, and install the new one. I just like to put a little bit of diesel on there to get a wet torque scenario. Make sure it's seated all the way down so that prevents fuel from leaking. And then you will install your new fuel filter. Get it nice and tight. Really helps to have two hands sometimes, but I'm trying to get every angle for you guys. Undo the top. That's gonna allow you to bleed the system. And then for the 95 and older trucks, you'll be able to get in this fuse box here. Find your lift pump relay, should say right on it, and you should be able to jump the power terminals on it. That will allow your lift pump to run. That will bleed all the air out of the system until you start seeing a steady stream of fuel come out of the top of that filter housing. For the 96 and newer guys, you'll be able to run like a jackrabbit and quickly turn your key. Watch fuel spray everywhere and tighten it up. See how fun that is? And then your fuel system is bled. You should be able to turn the key and start your truck. No issues. So I'll move on to the lift pump filters. You just get a drain pan, and again, not everybody has these aftermarket lift pumps. The factory ones will not have a filter setup on them, but for those who are interested, go check out my Fast 165 on a 6.5 video, and that will give the full install and show you guys kind of what goes into installing an aftermarket lift pump. But you spin these filters off. Where I do have a sump kit, the fuel from the tank will just bleed into the filter. Leave it loose until the filter's full and then tighten it up. Change the fuel water separator first, and after this is tight, then fuel will start bleeding into this filter, which is your actual fuel filter. Once that's full, tighten it up. All the air is bled out. And just like that, after wasting a little bit of fuel, the new filters are changed. For anybody who is not familiar with my truck, I am fully aware of how low these filters hang. I completely understand that it is a little sketchy off-roading in my truck with these filters hanging down so low. I get it. I did not want to mount them there. They will not be staying here. As soon as I fix this bed mount right here, they will be tucked up in behind the bed and they will be out of harm's way. But for right now, this works perfect. So after those filters are changed, of course, you're gonna want to start it up, make sure there's no air, anything of that nature, and then we're gonna move on to the air filter. It's super simple to change it on the SMB. Of course, most of y'all are gonna have factory filters and they will not look like this, but they will be in the same location. For the SMB filters, it's just these 4 screws. It's easiest to take these 2 screws out, pull this horn back, and loosen the clamp that holds the filter onto this horn. And then you're able to remove the filter, spray it out, put it back in, tighten everything back up, and you are good to go. Anybody running the factory filter setup, just change it. It costs like 20 bucks, I think, and just take care of your trucks, change the filter. God knows how long it's been in there, since the previous owner or the last time you personally changed it. Change your air filter. Your truck will thank you. So, while you're underneath the hood, when was the last time your glow plugs were changed? It'd be a perfect opportunity to change all 8 glow plugs, especially in the winter. If you've noticed last year that your truck started hard in the winter, in the cold, or anything like that. Even in the summer, if these things don't have really good glow plugs or anything like that, you can experience a hard start. Change your glow plugs. They're relatively cheap. If you want to know the location of those, check out my head gasket video. Super straightforward. They're just on the side of the heads, right next to the exhaust manifold. Pretty easy to get at, other than the passenger side, back towards the firewall. That one can be a pain in the butt, but you can get to it, and it's not that big a deal. Replace your glow plugs, and again, your truck will thank you. So, another friendly reminder, usually people forget until it's piss pouring raining outside, change your wiper blades. Always a good idea to have a spare set of wiper blades on you, especially if you get caught in a rainstorm or anything like that, snowstorm. Just go ahead and replace them. I wouldn't say every service, just because you're not constantly using your wiper blades, but whenever they're wore out, just keep in mind they are replaceable. I've had a bunch of people ask me, how big of a pain in the butt with this wiper cowl is it to replace the wiper blades? A humongous pain in the butt, considering you cannot raise the damn wiper all the way up. But you gotta lift them up about halfway, and once you get them all changed out, you just cycle the key and they go right back down. And then it hides them. So I like that look. Not everybody likes the wiper cowl, but it's my truck. I do what I like. Back under the truck we go. So these Chevrolets have an independent front suspension, and granted, yours may not look exactly like mine, hence the Rough Country 6-inch lift, but the grease fittings still exist. These trucks were pretty notorious for blowing out tie rod ends, lower ball joint, upper ball joint, wheel bearing, things of that nature. Also, these sway bar links. It's a good idea to just get under here and shake things out, make sure there isn't excessive play, and to grease all of the fittings. It's a Zerk fitting. Make sure it's greased. These little rubber bushings right here should be pretty full with grease. If they're deflated like this one is, probably time to grease it. So I'm gonna hit every single one of these on both sides. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you got 4 over here. And then the idler arm bracket has a grease fitting on the top. The idler arm itself has a grease fitting down along the steering rod right here. With a lift kit, will be up here. So there's a grease fitting right behind this joint. Make sure to get that. Same thing over here with the pitman arm. You'll have one grease fitting right there where my shadow is. And just check out the steering components. If you have loose steering, you know, best to just check it out, make sure everything is nice and tight, and then when we get to rotating the tires, before we rotate them, we'll double check and make sure our ball joints don't have a lot of play, and the wheel bearings. Best way to check them is to get a jack, a pry bar, and use your phone, get yourself a camera or something, and point it directly towards the hub and check for play. You'll definitely notice up and down play on the ball joints. Also, another thing where these do have a CV shaft for the front differential. These boots were known for going bad if you see just random like splatter of grease. Check your boots. They could be weather rotted or just cracked or anything like that. Probably a good time to replace the CV axle. Yeah. Also, while you're down here, of course, go check out my bomb-proofing a 6.5 video. I kind of go into a little more depth on this, but make sure the rubber on your pulley isn't all dry rotted and shit like that. Reach behind the harmonic balancer, right where my thumb is. There's a little rubber kind of O-ring on this harmonic balancer in the back. Check and see if that's pushed out. You'll be able to get right up behind the pulley with your fingers. If that's pushed out, replace it. If you don't keep your eye on it, you're gonna break your crankshaft. Replace it. Get the fluid dampener. And you don't necessarily need the aluminum billet pulley, but it helps. The aluminum pulley will never go bad, and it won't have this rubber that has potential to dry rot. So just keep an eye on everything. Of course, while you're underneath here, check for any leaks, of course, like your front differential. All this oil is primarily caused by my valve cover gaskets leaking. Again, this motor isn't staying in this truck. Stay tuned till the end of the video, because I'm kind of hinting at something, but and stay tuned for the next video, because that's when I'll be revealing said something. So let's keep moving. Also, before I get to the greasing, it is a good idea to check your upper and lower control arm bushings. If they're all cracked and you can see that, you know, something doesn't look right, it's not exactly even or anything like that. Of course, the lower ones are down there. Think about getting them replaced moderately soon, especially if you notice, like, you know, I just had an alignment done, but for whatever reason it's still not pulling straight, or I'm hearing a clunking in the front. Number one, those alignment technicians should have noticed that. They are robbing you blind if, you know, they noticed it, or if they did your alignment and either they didn't notice that they were bad and you see it for yourself, or they noticed it was bad and didn't say anything. They are robbing you. You will be back for another alignment, or you'll go over to another alignment shop and you'll get it done again. Don't waste your money. Just like with my oil change, I know I bought more oil than what this truck takes. I'm saving the oil that I bought because, one, Detroit's leak. It's just a thing that's gonna happen. And then, you know, if for whatever reason you don't notice a leak, periodically, again, check your oil. Make sure that it is up to snuff. Don't let it go low. Saving your oil then saves you money, saves you headache from buying a new motor. So I'm gonna grease this thing. A couple grease fittings I forgot to mention. On the front U-joint, the slip joint, and the other U-joint on the front drive shaft. Check your rear drive shaft for any grease fittings and get them greased as well. Alright, now that we got everything on the truck all greased up, let's rotate the tires. So I'm not going to be able to record this segment of it. My phone is going low. I got to put it on the charger, and my tripod actually broke. Well, the mount itself broke off it, and it dropped my phone. And now my screen's cracked, but nevertheless, so I gotta put my phone on the charger. But the way that I was taught how to rotate tires on a single rear wheel pickup is both rear tires come to the front, both steer axle tires go to the back on the opposite sides. So that tire will move to this position, this tire move to that position, this tire will move up, and this one will move over to the passenger side rear. Go ahead and shake your front end down. I may record that, just how to do it. Also, while you're underneath your truck, it's a good idea to check for any exhaust leaks as well, especially at the crossover pipe. Let's see if I can turn on the flash. Okay, especially where the exhaust manifold right here meets the crossover pipe. This gasket sandwiched in between here at the end of my finger, those go bad. It's just a good idea to keep your eye on that, especially if you hear any like tick 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 sound. You could have an exhaust leak. It's just good to keep your eye on it. If you reach your hand up in there, kind of felt around it, and you pull your hand back down, there's soot all over it, chances are that gasket is bad, along with the exhaust manifold gaskets. It's not super common that they go bad, but everything is meant to break, so just give your truck an overall inspection. You want this thing to last, you want it to be good to you, well, you got to be good to it. And also, check all your lights. It kind of amazes me how many people just don't walk around their vehicles with all their lights on, and like even with the four-ways on, and see that, oh, my blinker hasn't worked for the past 4 months and I can't afford one bulb. Come on, fix your lights. Luckily mine are all LED and are all working. I know they are working, especially the cab lights, the high beam, low beam, everything like that. Check your lights, check the coolant level, everything of that nature. Just give your truck a good inspection. It doesn't hurt to walk around it 5 times and doing an oil change, just to make sure everything else is good on the truck. So yeah, I'll get to rotating those tires and showing you guys kind of how to check your ball joints and wheel bearings. Alright, so best way to check for bad ball joints and bad wheel bearings. Get you a jack under the lower control arm. Take your pry bar, stick it into the tire, put your hand on the very top of the tire, and see if there's any back and forth play that's significant, and you can really feel it in the palm of your hand. If there is, then I'd really bring the camera about right here, or get a friend. Friend's always best because they can look at it from behind here and really tell you which ball joint is bad. But if you're trying to replace one ball joint, better off just replacing all of them. So really good there on my truck. Another thing I like to do is I like to stick the pry bar on top of the brake rotor and give a good tug up. That's another good indication on checking ball joints and wheel bearings. This one's good. The last time I had an alignment done, of course with a lifted truck it's more difficult to get an alignment true, especially with wide tires. These are 12.5 wide. Are they? Let's see, double checking. Or yeah, 12.5 wide. Gladiator X-Comp MTs. Your front end is going to wander the wider the tire you go, as from what I've experienced. And for whatever reason, people have given me a bunch of BS on, well, I can't get your alignment like super true, but this is as close as I could get it. As much bullshit as that is to me, because I used to do alignments at another location that I worked on big rigs. You can always get an alignment better than what you're dealing with. That's just my personal opinion. Not saying that, you know, that guy didn't work hard at getting my alignment done, but I could always, if I had a machine, I would do it. And I know I could do it with a string, but it's good enough for me. I really can't complain too bad. And if you keep your tires rotated, this little bit of wear that you got, of course these will go on the back. It'll make your tires a little louder, because now these are actually running true with the rear axle, and it's those, the rear tires turn to run on the front axle. But yeah, this is what I've experienced. Another thing, if your truck is pulling hard one way or the other, now that you're doing a service, check all of your tire pressures. You know, if one is 10 pounds less than all the rest, it's going to pull to that one side. And, you know, as good as your alignment is, if one tire is more flat than the other, it's going to pull. So just make sure all your tires are the same air pressure. That way you can eliminate that aspect of it at least. But I'm going to check the other side real quick, rotate these tires, and we'll close up. Everybody, so wheels are swapped around, all the PSI on all the pressures in the tire are done, and even and right where I want them to be at 65 pounds. I am going to get changed up and clean all the motor oil out of my bed, because this past weekend's little adventure I'll be releasing in the next video, so stay tuned for that. It's another project on the channel. I am super excited for this one, but I hope that helped y'all out. Please, if I forgot anything, leave it in the comments below. What are your service rituals? What do you do to your truck to help maintain the longevity of it? How often do you change your oil? Please let me know in the comments below. I love talking to you guys. So that being said, I'll see you legends in the next one.